I mean, I think the best way maybe to explain, to make it slightly easier, is this issue of state police, for example. So a state wants to opt into state police. There are certain minimum standards that the state will need to meet before they are allowed to have state police. In the same way, if you go back to safe school, what government needs to do is to say, okay, there are certain minimum standard a school needs to have, rather, to be captured in the safe school initiative. A simple, very simple example is what I've given. Fence the school, the perimeter should be secure. You know, so a school that doesn't have a fence, for example, how do you secure it? So this is part of the problem. So that is where the subnational they have to step up here. You know, when you're talking about primary school, that's exclusively a state matter. Even secondary school, even though that is concurrent, 90+% or 95% of secondary schools in Nigeria are state controlled. You know, I know federal government have a few, but that's very few. So largely these are institutions that states control. And that is why I've said many times that this idea that it's only when they control the police that they can secure their state, for me, is an excuse by many governors to hide the dereliction of duty. You know, you don't need to control the police to have every school in your state have a fence around it. You don't need to control the police to make sure that every school have a school gate that can be locked during school hours. You know, these are things, these are infrastructure development state governments can do, and that makes securing those schools physically easier, so to speak. Because somebody say, oh yeah, they can break the fence, but breaking the fence will make so much noise, so to speak, that it will alert security agencies. But when there's no fence to start with, they can just walk into the classroom just like that. So it's important, therefore, that the government should expand the Safe School initiative to make sure there are minimum standards that schools on board of it need to meet in terms of what I call the residual security in situ, in the locality. Then the intervention of the kinetic intervention of the security forces can then be meaningful, so to speak. So that, I think, needs to be done, and state government, like I said, need to do a lot more than they are doing at the moment.